Oh,
Now I want to do a pregnancy update. So this will be an actual update for weeks 5 through 20 because right now I'm at 20 weeks. So I'll get started with when I first found out. So I found out on May 19th, and I'm looking down because I have notes. I found out on May 19th. I actually did a video of how I found out, but that was the actual date. I found out on the 19th, and then I made an appointment for the very next day, which was the 20th. And on this appointment, they said I was too early, and so they didn't do an ultrasound. They just pulled blood and tested my urine and all of that. So my next appointment was scheduled for May 25th. No, sorry. So at this time, my niece had graduated. My niece and my nephew actually had just graduated. So we were going to their graduation party. And this is actually a story that I have to tell you about a near drowning that me and my son both had. So this was one of those occasions where it was a pool party, and my son, he was in the pool. He's 9 years old, right? And he's actually had some swimming lessons, but not enough to be confident enough to start swimming. So in this particular incident, he was on the far end of the pool, and I was watching him the whole time. But he was on the far end of the pool where he could stand up. For whatever reason, he kept drifting to the deep end of the pool, and I told him to go back and forth. We kept doing this for a while, and then so when he had come back over to the deep end, he was actually on a float, and so I was looking up, but I was also talking to someone else. And while I was talking to them, I was looking back at my son. He was actually the only one in the pool at this time, and I saw him kind of flailing around. So I was like, oh my God, I know he can't swim or whatever. So I ran over to the pool, and I can't swim either. But I was like, I can't just not do anything. This is just not going to happen. So I actually jumped into the pool with him, and we both ended up almost drowning. And actually, when I came up for air, I started screaming. And one of my other older nephews, he jumped in and got both of us out. So, but that caused a lot of drama. All of that drama caused actually, when I went to the restroom to take off my wet clothes, I saw that I was bleeding. And I was like, oh my gosh. And it was bright red blood. So I hadn't seen that since my period, basically. And I wasn't expecting to see that. So it scared me. So I started resting while we was at the party, but I didn't feel right. So I asked my husband to take me home. And I wanted to continue resting. And then when my son came home later that night, he actually was sitting in the bed with me, and him and I were talking, and he all of a sudden started coughing up blood. So me seeing that happen, after I knew what had already went down for that day, I was like, well, we need to go to the emergency room. Both of us actually at that point, because I was still bleeding, although it had slowed down dramatically. But I was like, just to be on the safe side, we both need to go to the emergency room. So we ended up spending that night in the emergency room. They did an ultrasound at that appointment, or that in the emergency room, but they didn't tell me anything. The only thing they could say is that they still could not confirm the pregnancy. Okay. So my first official OB appointment was on June 3rd, and they did an ultrasound, and that's where they just saw the sac only. It was nothing actually in the sac, so they still couldn't confirm the pregnancy. They pulled blood that same day, and they measured me from the dates that I had given them. I measured 5 weeks and 5 days at the time. Okay, so during this time, my main symptom was fatigue. Like, I was extremely tired all day long, every day. I couldn't get enough rest. I would come home from work and actually have to take a nap, which I hadn't done that since I was pregnant with my first son. And so, my doctor actually called me in between these two appointments to explain that my HCG levels, she said that they should have been to the point they were so high that it should have actually shown a baby on my ultrasound. So we scheduled another appointment. That appointment was on June 13th. And so on that appointment, I actually took my husband with me, and we did an ultrasound, and they saw the baby with a strong heartbeat at 147 beats per minute. And I was measuring 7 weeks in one day. And so at this appointment, I was actually referred to a high risk specialist. Um, so after that, some of the other symptoms that I had were exhaustion, some nausea, bloating, sore breast. I think that was one of the first symptoms I noticed was the sore breast. Actually sensitive to smells, which I didn't have with my first pregnancy. So it's a new symptom for me where I would actually get nauseous from smelling something that didn't smell pleasant. Cramping, and then I was gassy. So my next appointment was actually on June 27th, and this was my first high-risk appointment. They did an ultrasound and measured me, and I was at 9 weeks and 3 days at the time, and then 172 beats for the heart rate. And my doctor actually went through explaining why I was considered high risk. It's basically because of my age and because I had my son early. And then they explained the progesterone shots called Makena. So at this time, it was starting to get real to me, although I was trying not to get too excited because I had losses in the past and it just wasn't real to me. So I was still like doing stuff like hiding my belly at work because I didn't want to have to go into explaining to anyone about, well, yeah, I'm pregnant, but I don't want to let a whole bunch of people know. So I was hiding it at work and I was hiding it at home from my son as well. So my next appointment was July 18th, and that was where we confirmed I was 12 weeks. We did an ultrasound with a blood test, and this blood test actually checks for the chromosomes. They check for abnormalities in chromosomes as well as the gender. And so at this time, my son was in California, and I was trying to figure out exactly when I wanted to tell him because I was officially at the end of my first trimester. So that's when they're consider you like at low risk for a miscarriage at that point. So I was like, okay, well, I can go ahead and probably tell him. And the reason I didn't want to tell him before is because this is all something we've been praying for years and years and years, him and I both, along with his dad. And so I didn't want to get his hopes up and then have to you know. So I didn't want to get his hopes up without basically knowing for sure for myself. So my son was in California. He was visiting family. And so he wasn't scheduled to return until July 25th. And so I didn't want to tell anyone really before I told him. So when he came back in town, it was July 26th. And so I actually did a video with him where I did an interview with the 9-year-old. And I actually posted that on YouTube. You can't hear it because he was talking so low at the time. So you can hear my questions, but you can't hear his answers. But I actually presented him with a certificate saying that he was being promoted to Big Brother. And he was so excited. He actually showed that certificate off to everyone in the neighborhood. It was really cute. Okay. So now my next appointment is actually where we found out the gender. This is in my next high-risk appointment. So they went through they went through the test or whatever, and they was telling me that I was basically low risk for all of the chromosomes that they tested for, all the chromosome abnormalities that they tested for. I was at low risk, and then they told us that we were having another boy. And so at first I was like, well, I really wanted to have a girl, but then I was like, well, I'm good with boys. Like, I know what to expect with boys. So, and then I was happy because my son would actually get to grow up with a brother. Like, what guy doesn't want a brother? So I was happy about that. Everything, it was kind of like a short-lived disappointment. And then I was over it. I was like, well, it's good. I'm having a boy again. I know what to do with boys. But I kind of like wanted to have a girl because I felt like then it would be complete. Like, I got a boy and I have a girl. I'm done, right? Like, done. So I don't have anything else to worry about. So, yeah, at that appointment, we found out we were having, and then we kind of we were trying to figure out how we wanted to tell everyone. Do we want to do a gender reveal party? And I didn't really want to do a gender reveal because that's just like throwing another party and whatnot. I didn't want to get into all that. We was actually going through some things, and I didn't want to do a whole big to-do about it. But my husband did, and so what does that mean? And so he actually wanted to do a fireworks display. I wanted to just do a regular, like we do the balloon. Just pause it.